So, you want to learn bass? Well, go get your bass and let's get started. That's what you guys should have learned from last lesson. So for this lesson, we're just basically going to overview some of the stuff that we learned from last lesson and make sure that we grab a hold of some very revelatory and important things to know about bass and the basics. Basics. You see what I did there? See what I did there? Okay, that's kind of cliche, but yeah, so learning bass, right? So I overviewed a lot of the electronics, a lot about the pickups, a lot about the nuts. So you know what? I was like, I need to go more into this detail so they actually know like what the parts of the bass are, and that they make sure that you know, they know what certain parts of the bass do. Not go too in depth, but like just to give a little more in-depth explanation. So these are your two pickups right here, right? Let's start with the pickups. These basically are like when you play the string, there's a signal that the pickups receive, and they go through the electronics here, and this is some of the bass, some of the control knobs here are this is volume. For me personally, the knobs do volume right here. This is your balance pickup. So if you want the neck pickup, you roll it forward to the neck. If you want more of the bridge, you roll it backwards towards the bridge. And these pickups right here do different tones depending on where you place this knob, all right? And also where you place your thumb, your anchor, right? So if you place your thumb right on the neck, you get more of a neck sound, which is like more throaty. See, it's more throaty and versus the bridge, which is more like staccato-y. And if you guys ever listen to Jocko or more like jazz solos, stuff like that, they love this tone right here. It's more like staccato-y, it's more it's just more closed out, right? All right, on to the next thing will be your bass, mids, and treble. So it all depends on your bass. You can find your manual or you can find out through experimentation what your knobs do personally. But usually only active basses have a bass, mid, and treble. And all you really need to know right now is bass and treble. If you have a mid, keep it in the middle ideally around there. But passive basses actually don't have this. They have, so you know I have a balance pickup, right? Where I can choose my neck pickup and my bridge pickup and pan it out on which one I want to blend, right? So I can blend more neck or a little bit of bridge, or I could have more bridge, a little bit neck, or have them both equally on, which is what I usually prefer. But usually you want to keep these flat. Flat means like you keep them equal. You keep them right at the middle, all right? And this you don't really have to know. It switches the mid frequencies and it kind of shifts your tone a little bit, but you don't really have to know about this. So if you have a passive bass, which most people start out with, so you will have two volume knobs controlling the amount of volume that gets through the neck and bridge. So adjust to that. Usually keep it at the middle unless you prefer a certain tone. But right now, just keep it right at the middle. Keep everything at the middle, and just make sure you can hear yourself, all right? And make sure your amp is in the middle too. Ideally, you always just want to keep everything rolled to the middle. So like if you don't have like this kind of pressure sensitivity on your knobs where it locks onto the middle, then just like rotate it on one side and rotate it completely before it stops and try to guesstimate where the middle is. That way you have a good baseline tone. All right here will be the bridge, and this is where you're going to run your strings through and actually attach them to the tuning pegs where they're connected via the bridge and the tuning pegs. Why am I being redundant? But yeah, basically, and this is the nut right here which holds them in place. And I want you guys to know something. This is very, very basic, but just to make sure you guys know, the top string is the lowest string, right? And the higher you go, or the lower you go right here, you're actually going higher in pitch. And the more you go from up the neck to down the neck, the higher the note becomes. So listen to this very carefully. Listen to how my first note's going to be very low, and then how my last note's going to be very high. Low, high. And then for top to bottom, from string to string, low, high. So that's just something very important to keep in mind, that you're going from low generally to high. Now guys, I want to teach you how to have proper form in depth, because I don't really go through that. I just basically said learn it and just watch it, but like I really need to explain it better. So I will do that for you right now. So when you keep your hands on, we're going to talk about your fretting hand right now. You want to keep your thumb right here mostly perpendicular. That means you're pointing away from the neck, right? You're not pointing towards it. So you don't want to be holding it like this, right? You want to be holding your thumb right at the middle of the neck, all right? If you guys can see that, I'm holding it right this and keeping it straight and relaxed, all right? And let's go more in depth with the plucking hand, all right? I told you guys last lesson that you don't want to have too much of a bend, right? So what some bassists tend to do is that they bend too much, and they later, as they play throughout the years, throughout months, throughout weeks, right? They build up issues on their joints, and they build up issues right here on their tendons, and they get injured, right? So the way you want to properly position your arm is generally right in the middle of the pickups, right? Unless you prefer neck or bridge, it doesn't really matter where you place it, but just somewhere comfortable, okay? And like I said, you don't want to play too flat, and you don't want to play too over and too bent. So you want to keep it relaxed. And so when you mix this all together, you have a hand that is straight, that is right dot on the middle of the neck for your thumb, and you have your fingers over it, keeping your fingers really close to the neck. And you have a plucking hand that is correctly positioned, that isn't too bent, that isn't too flat, and where your thumb is resting on either the pickup or the string. The next thing I want to clarify to you guys is with muting. So when you're muting string to string and you're playing open strings, right? If you go from next string to string, if you don't mute, you're gonna the sounds are gonna be clumped up. It's gonna be all over the place, and there's gonna be this weird tension in the sound that you're producing, and it's gonna be very muddy because it's bass, right? It's a very heavy instrument. So in order to mute it from string to string, you can either use your palming hand right here, or you can use your plucking hand when you're going to the next string. Watch very carefully how I mute this E string. So when I'm going to the next from E to A string, I'm actually just allowing my fingers to go back even further to mute that string. Another way you can mute your string is by using your left hand, by closing your palm, all right? And here's how it goes. So either method works. Another method that you want to be using is that if you're going from next string to string, you could also do a string skipping with your thumb, with your plucking hand, all right? So you see how I'm just going from next string to string with my thumb to make sure that it's muted and clean. And you want to basically practice that. And I basically just wanted to go all over that just to make sure that there were no missing gaps and that I clarified each and every step, because the basics are super important. That's just what I wanted to stress again in this lesson, all right? So guys, I want to teach you guys how to tune right, and I basically said you guys need to have a tuner and that you need to tune to your open strings, like I said, with E, A, D, G, and just adjust it to the right volume, right? With your tuning pegs. But if you guys do not have a tuner, there's tons of apps on the iOS store, right? On the Google Play Store, where you can get these free apps and tune your instrument to the right pitch. So we have no excuse to not be tuned. So make sure that you are tuned. And I just want to teach you a little bit more about how to tune it. This is how you loosen it. You go lefty loosey, right? This is how you loosen the string. And to make it go even higher, you go clockwise. You go righty-tighty. Use your tuner, as I said, until it's the right pitch, until you see the right note pop up, right? If it's too tight, loosen it. If it's too loose, tighten it. So make sure it's dot on. So yeah, guys, I just wanted to go over the electronics, what the bridge was, what the nut was, the tuning pegs, going over our exercises that we learned on the first lesson, going a little bit more in depth and teaching you the reasons as to why we do certain things and what the certain parts of the bass are. Just because I didn't feel like I explained well enough last video, and I wanted to clarify that and give a more detailed explanation before we go further. And I hope this lesson helps. This was mainly mandatory because, again, there are a few things that we must know about the bass before we continue to move forward. All right, I'll see you guys in the next lesson.